He is the most tragic champion in American boxing history. Once a man of immense glory, he lost everything overnight. Now, he lives in a dim, cramped tenement where the milk for his kids has to be watered down just to last.
Ma, I want some more.
Oh, I'm sorry, sweetheart. We need to save some for the boys.
I dreamed last night. I dreamed I had a steak. Thick, juicy steak. I'm stuffed. You wanna give me a hand?
J Braddock leaves every scrap of food for his hungry daughter, heading out to find work on an empty stomach. But even before dawn, the docks are swarmed with desperate men. Today, the foreman only picks 9 people. Jim isn't one of them. He leaves in silence, heavy with disappointment. Luckily, his manager Joe manages to scrape together a fight for him that night. $50, win or lose. But before the bell rings, Joe notices Jim's right hand hasn't healed. Fighting now could ruin his hand forever.
I owe everybody money, Joe. I owe everybody money. I can't get any shifts. We ain't got any cash.
Joe knows how desperate things are, so he says nothing and just wraps Jim's hand in extra layers of gauze. But the fight is a nightmare. Jim's injured right hook is soft and powerless. He's forced to rely entirely on his left, something he's never been good at. After several rounds of a stalemate, the crowd erupts in boos, accusing them of a fix. Driven to desperation by the jeers, Jim instinctively swings his right, and the bone snaps instantly. The rest of the match is a disaster. Infuriated fans pelt the ring with popcorn and trash to vent their rage. Finally, the referee declares a no contest. To make matters worse, Jim isn't paid a dime, and the boxing commission revokes his license on the spot. Desperate, Jim begs the officials for a second chance, but his pleas fall on deaf ears.
Go home.
I can still fight.
Go home to me and the kids, Jim.
Go home with what? Go home with what? Mr. Johnson!
Jim doesn't know how to face his wife and kids. He stands at the same intersection where he was once a king, a man who earned $10,000 a fight and was cheered by thousands as the gentleman of the ring. But a shattered wrist, the onset of the Great Depression, and a string of bad investments dragged his family into the slums. With nowhere left to turn, Jim has his wife paint black shoe polish over his cast to hide his injury, hoping to land a shift at the docks. Luck is on his side the next morning, and he's picked for a day's work. The pay is only $5, but at least they can eat. It doesn't take long for his co-workers to notice he's only using one arm.
You can't slow me down. I need this job.
I need a job too.
What's wrong with the goddamn hand?
But moved by Jim's sheer grit, they keep his secret. Returning home after a brutal day's labor, Jim is shocked to see a large sausage on the table. When he learns his oldest son stole it, he doesn't scold him. Instead, he takes the boy to return it personally. On the walk back, his son mentions a friend who was sent away because his parents couldn't afford to keep him. Jim feels a lump in his throat. He looks his son in the eye and tells him that no matter how hard life gets, we never steal.
And I promise you, we will never send you away.
But Jim's promise is soon crushed by a cold reality. The electric company cuts their power over 3 months of unpaid bills.
No, you can't.
If I don't, they let me go. Lady, I got kids too.
Without light, they rely on the flicker of a candle. Without heat, they have to tear down the backyard fence for firewood. Still, his youngest son falls ill. Jim realizes that even with the odd jobs at the docks, it would take 6 months to pay off the debt. Watching her son shiver in the cold, Jim's wife is heartbroken. Without telling Jim, she makes the agonizing choice to send the children to live with relatives. When Jim drags himself home to an empty house, he realizes exactly what has happened. This is a champion who never quit, yet he realizes he can no longer even protect his own children.
And I promised him with all of my heart I would never, ever send him away.
Jim, you didn't see. You weren't here.
He leaves his meager savings on the table and walks out without a word. His wife chases after him, but she doesn't realize that Jim is about to sacrifice the one thing he values most, his dignity. He joins the long, soul-crushing line at the relief office. He receives $19 in emergency aid.
I never thought I'd see you here, Jim.
But it's not enough to pay the bills. He has to find another way. On the streets, he sees 2 different worlds. Poor kids drinking from fire hydrants, while rich kids in luxury hotels clutch massive lollipops. In that moment, Jim realizes a poor man's pride is a luxury he can't afford. He walks into the boxing club, back to the men who used to work for him and the boss who just fired him.
The thing is, I can't afford to pay the heat. You know me well enough to know if I had anywhere else to go, I wouldn't be here.
Finally, a heavy-set man steps forward and pulls out his own personal savings. Inspired by his gesture, more and more people reach into their pockets. Some watch and laugh, refusing to spare even a dime. But Jim has let go of his pride as a champion. He stands there like a beggar, hat in hand.
Children, what the hell do you have to be sorry about? How short are you?
About $1.50.
With Joe's help, he finally gathers enough to pay the bills and bring his children home. By June of the following year, Jim finally catches the break of a lifetime. His manager, Joe, pays him a surprise visit with an offer. Jim's license is still revoked, so the fight is unofficial. They basically want him as cannon fodder for the world's #2 heavyweight. The original contender dropped out due to an injury, and the club is desperate for a replacement. Jim is the perfect fall guy. The best part? He gets $250 just for showing up, win or lose. Driven by the crushing weight of poverty, Jim says yes without a second thought. Right before the bout, Joe hears Jim's stomach growling.
I ran out of soup on the line this morning.
How the hell are you supposed to fight on an empty stomach?
He rushes to find a bowl of hash, but forgets a spoon. While Joe is out looking for one, Jim, too hungry to wait and careful not to ruin his hand wraps, starts shoveling the food into his mouth with his bare hands. A reporter catches him in the act and mocks him, calling him a hungry dog who has lost every bit of his former championship dignity. Jim just offers a faint smile. In the press box, the announcers write him off, and reporters bet he won't last 2 rounds. If it weren't for that $250 paycheck, Jim wouldn't even be in the building. Once the bell rings, the opponent's lightning-fast combos shatter Jim's defense, knocking him down in under 20 seconds. Jim faces a choice: stay down, take the $250, and go home, or stand up and fight like a man. In that moment, something deep inside him ignites. He doesn't just stand up, he fires back. With a surge of raw power, he unleashes 2 thunderous left hooks that catch the contender completely off guard. By the 3rd round, Jim is in the zone. Every punch he throws is a heavy hammer. His fighting spirit electrifies the crowd, who can feel the Cinderella Man making his comeback. He slips past a massive haymaker, counters with a surgical 1-2 combo, and with just 3 clean shots, the starving underdog sends the world's #2 fighter hitting the canvas. When the opponent staggers back up, Jim becomes a force of nature. He channels every bit of his resentment toward fate and his hunger for victory into his fists. It turns out that a year of grueling labor at the docks has turned his left hand into a lethal weapon. His old weakness has become his greatest strength. The arena erupts as the fans rise to their feet, their screams deafening. Within seconds, his opponent is out cold. Jim wins. The first thing he does after the fight, he finishes every last bite of that bowl of hash. That night, Jim brings home $250, and his children finally sit down to a feast. The next day, Jim is back at the docks for manual labor. That $250 was just enough to pay off his debts.
Listen in last night.
Is that really you?
Yeah,
Makes you a rich man, huh?
around here.
But soon, Joe returns with more news. Jim's upset victory has become a media sensation, and under public pressure, the Boxing Commission has reinstated his license. This is his shot at a total comeback. To clear Jim's mind of financial stress, Joe advances him $175, enough to cover the family's expenses for 2 weeks, so Jim can train full-time. But Jim's wife, May, can't find a reason to smile. She's terrified of losing him.
Joe, open the damn door.
You are not gonna make my husband your punching bag all over again. You're taking him from his work like some blood-sucking little leech. He'll not let you.
When Joe opens his door to them, May is stunned. To fund Jim's comeback, Joe has sold everything he owns and is drowning in debt himself. Seeing his sacrifice, May is overwhelmed with guilt and gratitude. Joe eventually convinces the promoters to set Jim up against a top-tier opponent. If Jim wins, he gets a shot at the world heavyweight title. With Joe's backing, Jim dives into a training camp so intense it rivals his prime years. When he steps back into the ring, he faces the formidable fighter who once defeated him. The man is faster and more agile than ever, a blur of motion. But Jim, armed with years of experience and his new dock worker strength, doesn't flinch. He meets the onslaught head-on, pressing forward and trapping his opponent in the corner. In the past, he didn't want to lose. Now he cannot afford to lose. Sure enough, in just 3 rounds, Jim lands a devastating power punch that sends his opponent down for the count. The KO proves to the world that the gentleman of the ring is officially back. But soon, Jim faces an even more formidable opponent. No matter how hard Jim lands his punches, the man seems immune to pain. To make matters worse, this opponent has done his homework. He relentlessly targets Jim's old rib injury. After several brutal rounds, Jim's ribs finally give out. The agonizing pain forces him into a clinch, desperately holding on to his opponent just to catch a breath. When the bell rings for the break, Joe doesn't let him rest. He pushes him to stay sharp. Joe's psychological tactics work, successfully getting inside the opponent's head. But just as Jim regains the upper hand, the pain in his broken ribs flares up. The opponent seizes the opening and lands a massive blow. Everyone thinks Jim is finished, but in that moment of crisis, images flash through his mind. His children shivering in the cold, the hunger in their eyes, and the worry on his wife's face. His fighting spirit reignites. He launches a fierce counterattack, a barrage of lightning-fast hooks that leaves his opponent bloodied. The crowd erupts, witnessing the gentleman of the ring reclaim his glory. To keep his family from being torn apart again, Jim knows he must win. By the 15th round, the arena is in a frenzy. Jim is unstoppable and ultimately secures the victory. After winning, Jim doesn't rush to squander his prize money. Instead, with a face still swollen from the fight, he walks back into the relief office. This time, he's not there to collect a check. He's there to pay back every cent of the government aid he received, with interest. He wants to do his part for a nation in agony. In this unprecedented depression, everyone is gambling against fate, hoping for a future. And Jim has become the living embodiment of that hope. During an interview, a reporter tells Jim's wife, May, that his next opponent is the new heavyweight king, Max Baer, a man who has literally killed 2 people in the ring. May turns pale. Even the boxing commission officials pull Jim aside, expressing their genuine fear for his life.
Boxing's dangerous, something like that? I think triple shifts or working nights on the scaffolds is just as likely to get a guy killed. How many guys died the other night, living in cardboard shacks trying to save on rent money?
From that day on, May is a nervous wreck. When she sees Jim teaching the kids how to box, she finally snaps.
No boxing in the house, right? No boxing, period.
She can't understand why he'd risk his life for one more fight, and the two have a heated confrontation. On the day of the big match, Jim says his goodbyes. Deep down, he's terrified too. But as he steps outside, cheers erupt from the street. The people are out in droves to cheer for their hero. Meanwhile, May goes to the church to pray, but when she walks in, she's stunned. The pews are packed with people who came there on their own to pray for Jim. In that moment, she realizes Jim is no longer just a boxer. He's a spiritual leader, a symbol of faith. She goes to his dressing room and tells him she finally understands his sacrifice and his responsibility. When Jim enters the arena, every eye in the house is on him. The fight begins, and Max Baer uses his massive physical advantage to taunt and insult Jim. But the Bergen Bulldog is a master of breaking through defenses. By the 4th round, Baer zeroes in on Jim's ribs, landing heavy blows that leave him doubled over in pain. In the 5th, Baer gets dirty, landing a cheap shot while Jim's guard is down, drawing boos from the crowd. He even clinches Jim and whispers insults about May, trying to goad him into a rage, but Jim keeps his cool. Bear's expression turns savage as he unleashes a tidal wave of power punches, leaving Jim covered in blood. Despite the onslaught, Jim remains surgical, waiting for his opening. Finally, he finds it, landing sharp counters that catch Bear off guard. For the next several rounds, it's a war of attrition, a ultimate test of will and spirit. At home, May finally turns on the radio, silently praying for her husband. As the final round begins, Jim ignores Joe's advice to play it safe and stay on the defensive. He chooses to go toe-to-toe with Bear. Max seizes the moment, landing a brutal uppercut that sends Jim reeling. Jim's vision blurs. He remembers the footage. This was the exact moment Bear killed his previous opponents. But the faces of his family flash before his eyes again. Just as Bear swings for the kill, Jim delivers an incredible counterpunch. The crowd loses its collective mind, surging toward the ring to witness history. With the last of his strength, J Braddock defeats Max Bear.
Winner and the new world.
This is the true story of James J. Braddock from 1935. His journey inspired millions to crawl out of their darkest moments. What doesn't kill us truly makes us stronger. Subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one.